And it's always been a major influence. He talked to me about Eisenstein from the very beginning days I ever knew him, and still does.
You created an image in Mean Streets which resonated around the world.
I didn't know that. I was just doing something that ultimately I realized, after my father died, I realized more about my father and his brother. Because that was the topic of conversation pretty much every night in my apartment when I was living with my parents. His brother lived below us, and his brother would get in all kinds of trouble. He was the one who became his brother's keeper, so to speak. He was the one who took care of him, and he was the one who had to settle with the other crime figures when there were problems.
Take it, Stoop. I'm doing it for you. Come on. Carrying on, huh? Cut it out, will you?
Come on, Charlie. $30 ain't nothing. You know that. Come on. You know the only way you're gonna do is if you talk to your uncle.
No,
That's
forget
it.
it.
Come on.
Please.
Why not?
I ain't gonna do it. Forget about that. All right? Did I hurt you? Come on.
Mean Streets led to Taxi Driver, in which Scorsese and Robert De Niro created a somber nightmare New York to reflect the inner turmoil of Travis Bickle, an existential loser who becomes an accidental hero, with a nod backwards to John Ford's dark western, The Searchers. The Palme d'Or in Cannes confirmed Scorsese as a world-class filmmaker. Paul Schrader's taut script brought European themes into American genre cinema, and film noir was reinvented.
I called it New York Gothic at the time. But there you are. Taxi Driver's written by Paul Schrader. Comes from the Midwest. Calvinist. He's got it in there. It's God's lonely man. And Travis is saying he's going to clean up those streets one day. A real rain is going to come. But both De Niro and myself felt very much like Travis. We felt dispossessed. We felt outsiders. Still do, in a way. I mean, I can't speak for him, I speak for myself. So you feel much like an outsider, in a way. I don't belong here in this office, in this street. I don't belong here.
Here on Park Avenue?
Yeah, Park Avenue. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
There's a certain emptiness everybody feels and everybody faces in themselves. The script has all of that, and the only images I can think of are the images that are in the film. I see New York that way. I really do.
New York City helped make Scorsese a cult director, but it was an imagined New York, a city of dreadful night, closer to Dostoevsky than Damon Runyon. This set him apart from the increasingly new age sci-fi world of the West Coast filmmakers of his generation, Spielberg and Lucas.
The East Coast filmmakers had a more urban sense of film. And with that, I think, came perhaps a certain kind of cockiness, which was, we're going to do what we want, and you're going to like it or not. The West Coast guys, like Steven Spielberg and George, would think a lot about what would work with an audience. Guys like Marty, you see it on Marty's terms. This is not, we don't want to step over the line and take your hand and lead you through this. We're going to drag you in. And that's the difference between West Coast and East Coast.
Scorsese's blossoming career required him to move to Hollywood, and it was here that he recreated his home city for his first proper studio film, a musical called, appropriately, New York, New York, starring Liza Minnelli.
And you'll be here, and you'll be busy, and you'll be
This was like life imitating Hollywood. Reinventing the 40s musical was not a success. Scorsese's personal life and career entered a turbulent period. But the films of these years were anchored in New York. The 1982 King of Comedy and the earlier Raging Bull, a downbeat boxing movie, very different from the triumphal Rocky series, with De Niro giving one of the greatest of all physical screen performances. But both films struck a sour note, and Scorsese's career was on hold.
Marty's sense of being an outsider or a young comer who had been an insider for a while and now was going into exile became reinforced in the 80s. And it was necessary for Marty to, in effect, reshape and rebuild his career.
After several comeback films, including the Greenwich Village comedy After Hours, Scorsese found a subject which took him back to his roots and forward to one of his greatest successes, both critically and commercially, Goodfellas.
The kid doesn't look like a gangster yet. He has to look. His shoes are going to be shined.
Right.
Yes, I think he should wear a shirt and tie. Christy, I want you to be here. The tie selected.
Goodfellas was based on the testimony of a former mafia foot soldier, but one who was half Irish, so could never be a made man.
Yeah.
It shows the mafia moving out to the suburbs and into new rackets like drugs, a stepping stone to the world of The Sopranos.
Well, he should say, hey, Mom, look. Hi, Mom. What do you think? What do you think, Mom?
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Hey, Mom, what do you think?
You look like a gangster.
I just knew about people trying to survive and people trying to make it through life with some kind of dignity, you know, and having a deal. That's the only society they knew. They couldn't move out. My father wasn't educated. My mother wasn't educated. You know, they had to live within that society.
And there was Anthony Stabile.
How you doing?
Frankie Carbone. And then there was Mo Black's brother, Fat Andy.
The first-person style of Goodfellas created an extraordinary sense of complicity. We get to know these wise guys and we share their exhilaration, up to the point where they're punished. What's the value of morality without temptation?
Nicky Eyes.
What's up, guy?
And Mikey Francesa.
It feels like your life. No matter who you are, you feel like you're in that group, partly because of that extraordinary opening line of Goodfellas, of the narration as far back as I can remember. I always wanted to be a gangster. And when I once asked Marty about that, I said, do you really think that? I mean, you know, it's really kind of true, isn't it? I mean, everybody, it's that reckless outlaw thing that is still there in the American spirit, albeit very buried. And he said, yeah, I really do believe that. After all, who wants to wait online at the bakery?
I think he felt that it was his duty, having lived in a neighborhood run by them, to show what it was that was so attractive about becoming a member and also what was so terrible about it.
Most of Scorsese's fans hadn't realised how far he'd travelled from his working-class childhood in Little Italy. So The Age of Innocence took them by surprise. Edith Wharton's novel about the heyday of the New York aristocracy ideally combined Scorsese's passions for literature, history, and New York. Above all, there was the challenge of bringing alive a world that few knew had ever existed. Visiting Gramercy Park, where some exteriors were shot, I realised how much Scorsese had risked alienating his core audience. I mean, did you come up against a lot of opposition to the idea of you, of all people, making a film set in this milieu?
Hilarity. People laughing. Richard Price told me, he said, Marty, I understand Albo Ferrara's going to do The House of Mirth. We just announced it. I said, really? Yeah. You know, it's a problem. I mean,
that's because you're being typecast. I mean, people are assuming.
Yeah, how many films with Italian American gangsters, and quote unquote gangsters, or Italian American street life, put it this way, did I make? Mean Streets, elements of it in Raging Bull, Goodfellas, and then Casino. That's 4 out of 17 or 18 films. But they liked me to do those. I think it was Time Out magazine said Goodfellas fit me like a knife in the heart. Yeah, maybe it does.
They dined out.
The first thing that drew me to it was the nature of Newland Archer and why he didn't leave. I wanted to explore that. Again, the sense of responsibility, the responsibility to his wife, but also to the tribe.
Archer embraced his new marriage even as he reverted to his old inherited ideas about matrimony. It was less trouble to conform with tradition. There was no use trying to emancipate a wife who hadn't the dimmest notion that she was not free.
I was interested in the different ways you communicate in a society like that the left corner of a card folded meant something, the right corner meant another thing. And that sort of thing. It's interesting to get to understand the intricacies of that world. And so I began to realize, too, in dealing with the trappings of their world, it's part of the prison that he's in, that he, for whatever reason, you can argue for or against that he should have left and he doesn't leave, that he decides to stay.